You're watching NewsX. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. Our big focus this hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has authorized the release of the 17th installment of the Prime Minister Kisan Nidhi Scheme, his first move after being sworn in as Prime Minister for the third consecutive time. The 17th installment of PM Kisan benefit of around 20,000 crores will reach 9.3 crore farmers, which will be released soon. The Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi Scheme is a central sector scheme which was launched in February 2019, which aims at providing financial assistance to landholding farmer families. Moreover, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said in a statement that the government is fully committed to farmers' welfare, and therefore it is fitting that the first file signed after taking charge is related to farmers' welfare. Joining us at this point is Shekhar Singh, agriculture expert. We also have Dr. Jayjeet Bhattacharya, President, Centre for Digital Economy Policy Research, live with us. Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist, joins us live. Ramneek Singh Maan, author and activist, is also live with us on the broadcast. Gautam Mukherjee, let me begin with you first. This is a government which stands for farmers and agricultural welfare, which is why the Prime Minister, of course, has signed his first file on this subject. Was the statement by PMO today? How important is the messaging of this move by Narendra Modi, the first decision taken by him after entering office for the third time?
Well, Uday, if the agricultural sector is modernized and if the kind of difficulties that the previous government had with the farmers in Punjab, Haryana in particular, also Western UP, are resolved perhaps informally, I think a lot of progress can be made and the contribution to the GDP from farming can be improved. So as a gesture and a signal, though this is not a very large outlay of 20,000 crores, some 8,000 for each person, it is a good move to start off with. Uday.
Yes, let me also, in fact, take that to Dr. Jayjeet Bhattacharya. Dr. Jayjeet Bhattacharya, this is, of course, important sector for India, given, of course, how the vast population is into farming and agricultural activities. This is a sector also that has contributed to the growth of our GDP. But it's also a sector which has seen, protests, particularly in the Modi 2.0 government. How do you see then the significance of this move, this decision on the first day in office for Narendra Modi 3.0? And also, how much agricultural growth do you believe we have seen over the course of the 10-year tenure of the Prime Minister?
So from a political perspective, I may not be the right person to comment on, but from a economic perspective, agriculture is challenged as we speak now, especially in this year with the monsoons getting delayed and with the heat wave coming in. So there will be an impact on agricultural produce. As you rightly said, agriculture supports 60% of this population in India in terms of livelihood, and it supports 100% of the population in terms of food security. So it will be very difficult for any other part of the world to feed 16% of the global population, which is represented by India. So India needs to ensure that we've got food security, and in which agriculture plays a very critical role. Also, in addition, if agriculture grows, the overall GDP also grows. And there are multiple factors that happen from the rural side once agriculture grows, because that leads to the two-wheeler being grown and the consumption going up, FMCG consumption going up, which then leads to industrial growth also happening. So therefore, agriculture becomes a very critical part of the economy, and it is only right that the first focus of the Prime Minister has been on agriculture. Of course, there have been protests on many issues, policy issues, which was being pushed in by the government in order to reform agriculture, in order to free it up and make it more dynamic and responsive to market requirements. Those are discussions that needs to continue. Those are dialogues that needs to be held, because we need to free up agriculture. We need to make it more dynamic, and the productivity needs to continue to grow. while at the same time we take out people from agriculture and put them into other industries such as manufacturing and services. And hence, there needs to be a very, very sharp focus on agriculture as we move forward.
Okay, Indrashekar Singh, let me take that across to you. Indrashekar, what do you make of this move taken by Prime Minister today? How revolutionary has this Kisan Nidhi scheme really been for farmers with the direct benefit for them? What do you believe is the messaging of it all as well, given the fact that it comes on day one of Modi 3.0, literally the morning after being sworn into office, Indrashekar?
See you there. First of all, thank you for having me on your show. I think the important message the Prime Minister is giving is that finally I salute the farmers. Narendra Modi caused the biggest farmer movement, in fact, the biggest protest movement ever in the history of the world in India because of pro-corporate farm laws. Now, by taking this first step, what the Prime Minister is doing, that yes, I am about to make a fresh start and agriculture is now really my priority. I think it's a good sign that the Prime Minister has done this. It calls out to the 60% of our country, 60% of Indians who are actually engaged either directly or allied with the agriculture sector. It's a message to all of them that this time maybe I'll make a better start. I will start and try and amend and fill the gaps that I caused in my previous 2 years. Now, you asked a question about the growth in agriculture. The only thing I've seen growing in agriculture is actually food inflation, starting from 2015 with the dal scam, and now recently food inflation, which is increasing every month by 9%. Recent reports were there, the price of tomatoes, that's grown to 400 rupees, 300 rupees, 200 rupees, price of adrak to 150 rupees, 200 rupees. So when we talk of the Modi regime and the agricultural policy, first, we have the world's biggest protest movement. Second, we have hyper food inflation. I think these two things mar the government. And this direct bank transfers is definitely a good step to curb the problem. But there are other fundamental problems with some of the flagship schemes. For example, the Fasal Bima Yojana, which needs to be improved because India is facing a lot of climatic stresses and erratic weather. We have the cyclone Remal, we had the Bipar Joy, and before that, other strange weather events. And the crop insurance policy does not cover them. There's a big dark area in which many farmers are left out. So this is, although a very good step, this is not a political point that I'm making, but this is a good step, but more needs to be done. The government needs to reimagine its flagship schemes with not only corporations, not only selected market players, but all stakeholders. We should be fair to industry and we should be fair to farmers. Leaning on one side will cause a lopsided growth and will result in dire consequences like food inflation, certain dal scams, things like that. So it's about time we get everybody on the table, not just economists, not just not just people who are supporting industry, but everybody, so that the country can progress and not a particular sector within the country. Agriculture sector, it's not a traditionally industry sector. It relies on nature, it relies on various other factors. And I think without counting them in our policy thinking, we will be again making the same mistake thrice. So this is a good step by Narendra Modi. I applaud him on this, but a lot more needs to be done.
Okay, let me get in Ramneek Man. Ramneek Man, your interpretation of this step taken by Prime Minister on the first day in office, the first signature, the first file cleared by the Modi 3.0 is for farmers, is for the agriculture sector. Ramneek Man, says a lot, doesn't it?
Good evening to you and to all my fellow panelists. Now I understand there is an underlying message there. It's more like कि पहली कलम से किसानों के लिए निर्णय लिया. So this literally means marks your priority, which I would feel is the need of the hour, because agriculture sector is one where the farmers are feeling very marginalized, especially in absence of a very strong reform which is required. I hope, the farm laws could have gone through, but this should come with a consensus this time, because there was no consensus building the last time. There should be a consensus building exercise. All stakeholders should be taken on board. The need of the hour also is to bring up a lot more agriculture-based industries, processing units. Agro-industries should be brought up, food parks. We have to focus on agriculture produce, let's say, sector-wise or cluster-wise. There are places where perishable vegetables wouldn't last, beyond 4 or 5 days without refrigeration. or without cold storage or without proper storage. Perhaps we are very grain rich, but our grains tend to rot in the godowns. So we need to understand, while we are feeding 80 crore people every month with free ration, we also need to ensure that the pinch should not go to the middle class's pockets. So there has to be a very, very strong focus on how this government, the Modi 3.0, the NDA 3.0 goes forward in their policy decisions, in their policy making, where the sector-wise per se, that there are areas which are perhaps mango belt, there are other which are sugar belt. We have places in the South India, we call this, rice bowl of India. So we need to focus on sectors, we need to focus on clusters, we need to develop such clusters. And we need to also focus on exporting our agriculture produce, which gives a very good yield and return. We find that, there are times when, like the gentleman Indra Shekhar Singh was referring to, that tomatoes and ginger get very highly inflated. And there are other times when, the government has to make up the losses for the farmers via Bhavantar Bhapai Yojana. The farmers at times are not able to meet their expenses in producing the crops, so they actually dump. I can quote you so many examples when in Jalandhar, farmers had dumped their potato on the roads because it was not fetching them the price. The plucking of chilies and plucking of tomatoes at times are costing more than what they cost in the mandi. So we need to focus on these agriculture processing units where you can turn these excessive vegetables, which are very highly available and low in demand, into perhaps, let's say, preserves, sauces, jams, pickles. And then you can also, when you go global in India, we have a very large population of Indians living in the United States, in Europe and other countries. You can sell your produce by turning them into finished product. Overseas markets are available for you. So we can actually make, and we have this farm produce organization, FPOs, is a very strong tool. But then again, we need to involve the corporate and we need to involve the farmer. We need to get the farmers in the mainstream corporate, where not just the Indian local mandis, the Indian market, but also the international market should be available to our farmers. Only then we can envision, let's say, a very strong contribution to our GDP, to our growth from the farming sector, which is perhaps 70% plus of our population.
Okay. In Shekhar Singh, you made the point earlier, that this is a good step and, more needs to be done. What more then needs to be done? Let's just speak a bit about that, because obviously the goal is to double farmers' income uniformly across the country. The goal is, of course, to further grow this sector as India looks to become the third largest economy in the world. What then are the steps that should be prioritized over the next 5 years?
Sure. I already touched upon the Fasal Bima Yojana, which is, I think, the most necessary next step in agriculture that's required, which will provide a safety net for all farmers enrolled in the scheme. Now, the third step that I think is extremely important is to create market links. Right now, there are no market links, and the farmers, like what Mansa was pointing out, it's just the story of every crop. Every time the farmer is growing, he's selling for a low price, and then he's buying from the market at a high price. Now, how do you expect an economy like this to function? So there needs to be real-time local economies which need to be rejuvenated. The farmers and the cities need to be connected. We don't need a big basket serving us in Allahabad when we have farmers all around. Why can't the FPOs and other cooperative models have a direct linkage with the city systems? That's one small idea. Then the other idea is that to prevent ourselves and make ourselves climate resilient, we have to go for multi-cropping. We have to go for certain support of agroecological farming, so that the taxpayer revenues also, the money spent on the taxpayer subsidies for fertilizers, they also reduce, and actually farmers and the consumers get better quality of food. We save more water. How about actually having a multi-millet program for farmers in North India or the South India, introducing that in our midday meal schemes, so that the farmer, when it's growing the millets, when he's growing the oilseeds, when he's growing the dals, Actually, those things are bought by the government, by agencies like NAFED and other central agencies, which are procuring them at the fair price. And I'm not saying it's the MSP. Whatever is the fair price decided between all stakeholders, that should be taken into account. Now, you talk about doubling farmers' income. Now, I go back to the Ramesh Chand report, who also wrote an agri-economist of, I guess, super nature, which failed completely, which failed the Modi government, which failed its own committees, and some of the suggestions like shifting people from agriculture into non-agrarian sectors. Well, where are the jobs? ILO reports that India has suffered the worst job losses in the country. So when you're shifting these people out, where are you shifting them out to? You're shifting them out to crime, to poverty, to destitution, and to sweatshops. So let's try and think of dignified models where we can, if we cannot generate employment in rural villages, have some sort of a dignified employment near the cities or in semi-rural settings. So that then alternate system needs to be built if we want to get people out of agriculture. You know, one basic idea of making agriculture very, very profitable is to reduce the input cost of farmers. How can we do that? We have to re-engineer that. We have to think about first, what is the true cost that the farmer is suffering? You know, we are right now not counting the farmer's own labor, the family labor, water, some of the other things. So right now, the system is skewed towards industry and towards the market. The farmer is not happy farming. Anybody who's farming, you know, I come from a farming family. My parents told me, go and study. Other people in my village, they are saying, go and study because farming, there's nothing left. So we need to change and reverse that attitude. We need to make farming more profitable. We need to decrease.
Well, the elections are over now. Gautam Mukherjee, it's time for action. It's time for a bipartisan approach towards the issue as well. It's time for consensus building as well. What more needs to be done for the agriculture sector? What more needs to be done for farmers, according to you? We, of course, will perhaps know very, very soon who is the agriculture and farmers welfare in the government of India as well, after portfolio distribution is done. But the PM, of course, leading from the top, taking this move. What follow-up steps are also needed now? Gautam.
Well, I think, you know, approaching this straight up with the farmers is going to run into vested interests, just like it did the last time. One of the ways that you make progress is by improving the infrastructure. Mr. Mann just made the point about grain rotting in our godowns. The godowns are primitive. They might as well have been in the 17th century. There is a 21st century version of what a godown ought to look like. Granaries, things which are computer controlled. You know, I have seen an animal feed farm in the Gulf where, you know, the entire is a great big thing. And there were just seven people, and a lot of computerization. And it ran on the basis of that animal feed, you know, from the initial process right up to bagging. So there's that. There is all kinds of rural infrastructure that can be improved, enabling. Mr. Singh just made the point about marketing linkages. Now, what I know of NAFED and people like that is that they are stuck in the 60s and 70s. They haven't made any progress since then. It's a moribund, you know, government outfit. Yes, you know, the business of remunerative prices could operate through them, but do they have the marketing muscle? I mean, they take it on. I mean, NAFED is pretty primitive. It was okay in the socialist days. Now, if we improve, you know, like we've done for the airports, like we've done for the railways, like we've done for roads, ports, if we improve every aspect of the, you know, the farming infrastructure without actually engaging with the farmer and getting into trouble over it, because, you know, that will just bog things down and become a political slugfest. But if you do all of this, then people are going to take advantage of the opportunities that it offers. Now, as far as the Aratiyas and people like that go, they're never going to change. They will keep at it till their dying day, because it means the difference between living the life of a king and being reduced to the level of any other farmer. So they're not going to cooperate. It doesn't make sense to their vested interests. But the ordinary farmer doesn't have access to many things. He has to go to the mandi. He has to go to places controlled by arthiyas. He has to go and be exploited by the middleman. Now, if there was a lot of infrastructure put in, he would start availing of this quietly, independently, and gain something. I think you can approach the arthiyas obliquely, but not head on. I don't think we're going to get anywhere in Modi 3.0 by coming at this again and talking of consensus. No, it won't work. Uday.
Yes. Okay, let me, take that to Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya as well. Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, for our economy's growth, how significant is this sector and how do we further propel its growth in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think one of the things we must understand, although we all know, is that agriculture is not just wheat and rice. We all know, but somehow the discussions just come back to wheat and rice all the time. I think many of the issues that Ramneek Singh ji mentioned are all valid, and not just for wheat and rice, but all kinds of food, especially as I've mentioned in this channel umpteen number of times, that with climate change coming in, we need to store food for not 2 years, but at least 4 to 5 years, and we need to review that policy, for which our entire infrastructure needed for food storage has to dramatically change. And therefore, all the automation that Gautam just mentioned has to be put in, and not just put in into India, then we have the expertise to export it to the rest of the world who will also need it. So can we become a leader in food storage technology for that matter? Let me take one small example of jute. Because the rains are delayed, so the jute crop was not cropped the previous year, and therefore they grew by 1 meter extra, which made them inflexible, brittle, and therefore useless. And therefore the farmers lost out in terms of the actual jute. Also in parallel, because of the success of the Prime Minister's Ujjwala program, which provided gas to everybody, the farmers could not sell the jute stock. Now the jute stock sells for about 10 rupees a bundle, which gives them additional revenues. But even that did not happen because of certain other program. Now, it doesn't mean that we go and stop a successful program. We need to focus on how to help out the farmers, move them from to alternate crops in a changing ecosystem. In addition, we need to have alternative mechanisms for consuming more of their crops. Also, please do keep in mind that from 1991, where agriculture was 35% of the economy, as we sit in 2024, it's only 15% of the economy. So it will have a lower and lower share of the economy, which is what is happening in the rest of the world. In fact, globally, agriculture is 4% of the global economy. So if we look at that, we will have agriculture as being a smaller and smaller part of the entire economy. And therefore, coming back, we really need to look at whether we should have 60% of our population working on 15% or 4% of the GDP. That really needs to change. Yes, there is a problem saying that where do we take them out to? But we need to first look at what we need to do and then go ahead and solve it. For example, if we need to make the storage infrastructure, we would need people to maintain it. We would need people to build it. And that's how we need to take people out of agriculture and put them into the allied industries, the food processing. There is still so much of potential. Again, those are things that Ramneek Singh ji mentioned. There is massive amount of potential that we have in this country, and we have still not utilized it to the fullest extent. If we can focus on what is the right thing to do in which area of India and start doing it, automatically some of the problems that we're talking about starts getting solved. Unfortunately, what is happening is that any new thing that is being brought in is seen as anti-farmer, and that is a very strange thing. For example, there is no subsidy for chicken, there is no subsidy for lamb. Those are industries which are doing extremely well. There are wealthy farmers who are raising chickens, raising many other products which are not under subsidy. Having said that, I'm not saying that we remove subsidy. My point is that every action taken to reform agriculture so that it grows at a faster rate should not be perceived to be anti-farmer. And therefore, obviously, the process has to be that you talk to all the stakeholders before you make the changes. And at some point in time, you need to make sure that which are the stakeholders who are stopping the change at the cost of a larger number of farmers getting impacted. In terms of its impact on economy, as I mentioned, it's extremely deep. If we do not have a robust primary industry, which is, and agriculture is one of the two primary industries, other being mining, agriculture is going to drive the rest of the economy. If we don't have food to eat, we can't buy fancy cars and build fancy homes and so on and so forth. It is fundamental. It's an inelastic product. We cannot live without food, no matter how much the cost is. We will pay for it, and therefore, food inflation is very, very critical in driving the overall inflation. For a second, we should not undermine the importance of agriculture as a critical sector of the overall economy. And therefore, we need to plod along in terms of figuring out how to free it up, how to make it better. I think there are quite a few suggestions from Chandrasekhar Singh. I think many of them made a lot of sense, and we need to look at that. There won't be a single magic bullet that will solve the entire agriculture issue.
Right. Okay. We're beginning to run out of time. Ramneek Man, I give a quick closing comment to you, and then I need to take a break.
The focus of the government in the previous years, ever since the Green Revolution came into being, is to either get into GM, genetically modified seeds, or hybrid seeds to, get a greater yield, to get more produce. But it has been very little in terms of research on how the byproducts can be utilized, not just in the shape of food, but also in shape of commercial products. It can be disposable plates, it can be parali, it can be, getting ethanol or XY. There has to be a mechanism, a research mechanism, where you actually get more income from your produce, not just through the yield, but also through the byproduct, the waste product. That is one. The second thing is that we need to also encourage the corporates and the farmers put together. And I'm saying this with a lot of research behind it, that whatever is in demand in the market this year may not be in demand the next year. Jaise is baar, if the tomatoes go at a very high price, the next season, all of us will go and start sowing tomatoes, and with the result, the prices in the mandi will come down. So we need to actually sow the crop which is more in demand, and also to have a greater contribution to the economy. We need to also encourage the farmers, and we need to actually come out and give a lot of concessions, if not concessions, at least assurance that, oil-based crops will be purchased. We are buying palm oil, which is not very healthy, by the billions from foreign countries, and we are losing our foreign exchange while our own farmers can produce such products, and its byproducts, jo khal bachti hai, that is used for cattle feed. It has a very, very high value as an animal, as a cattle feed. So there are multiple steps which can be taken into account. There can be more steps, perhaps not just in shape of a fresh policy or an act or a fresh law, but in shape of a better policy, more targeted policy, where the farmer feels more confident working with the government. And of course, like Mr. Gautam Mukherjee pointed out, you cannot get rid of the middlemen straight away. The DBT is a very good concept, but the DBT is not in vogue as of now, as far as the farmers are concerned. The Arthiyas have a very, very high stake in the farming sector, especially post the crop being mature. और कटाई के बाद जब फसल मंडी में ढेरी होती है, that is when the Arthiyas come into play. The government has to make sure that the Arthiyas also have to be looked after in a certain way. Either the commissions are settled or secured. It is only then you will see reforms coming without protests.
All right. Well, at the end of the day, of course, the reliance of middlemen was something that the government was trying to do away with. But an entire relook is needed, is what you're clearly stating. Well, for the time being, we've run completely out of time. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us on this discussion.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.